Hello everyone and welcome back to the Jamsey Online YouTube channel. I know you're excited to see the progress we've made on the cracked 4.2 liter Jaguar block, but real quick, I wanted to let you know that this video is sponsored by Bespoke Post. We'll have more on them later, but for now let's jump into it. To recap, in the previous videos we found that this block was cracked between all of the cylinders, so we've installed a set of top hat style cylinder sleeves in an effort to save this block to help our customer keep their 1968 Jaguar E-Type Series 1.5 all original. The block now needs the deck resurfaced, as well as to be bored and honed to fit the new pistons supplied by our customer. Since the block was off of the machine for a while and has been refixtured, we're starting by indicating in the deck of the block to ensure that we cut the surface true. The machine we're using is an RMC 1000 boring and surfacing mill, which has a fly cutter which can hold up to 2 cutting inserts. That being said, today we're running a single CBN cutting insert, similar to what is shown here. The first step in the decking process is to establish a 0 point on our Z-axis, which is done by simply feeding the cutter down over the block very slowly until you just hear the cutter making contact with the deck surface. At that point, we can set our Z-axis to 0 on the digital readout. We're going to leave the spindle at that 0 point on the Z-axis for our first cut, which will essentially be a 0 cut, or less than 1/1000th of an inch of material removed. You may remember from our previous video that some of the sleeves are still protruding a few thousandths from the deck surface, so this first cut will bring those closer to the same plane. The design of this engine also requires that the timing cover be mounted and surfaced at the same time as the deck. If you've ever wondered where all of the magnets are in an iPhone 13 Pro, this is how you find out. On our initial cut here, you can tell the areas that are low spots on the deck, as the cutter did not take the blue layout fluid off of those areas. So tell me what you were saying.
Okay, well I'm looking at this block here, and when we put the gauge on here, these center sections where you can see the blue or purple it hasn't cleaned up, there's still 3/4 thousandths low in that area. But with this flange liner we've put in here, we're counting on the head gasket sealing on the top of that flange. This area that still shows purple should not make any difference. So in my opinion, you wouldn't even have to go any farther with this block to clean this up. It's not going to make any difference. But where you are going to have to go further is all along this side over here, where the block has, I think a lot of this is a deterioration over the years.
There you have it. Wisdom straight from the cleaning guy who's been working here for nearly 40 years. Since we know we need at least 3 more thousandths to clean up, we'll take it to 2 thousandths on the DRO for this next cut. While we could definitely save time by going straight to 4 or 5 thousandths in a single cut, we prefer to take it a bit slower and take as little material as possible to clean up. If you're wondering, our spindle is running at the max speed of around 640 revolutions per minute, and the table is traversing 160 millimeters per minute, or roughly 6.3 inches per minute. Honestly, we were amazed that this cleaned up so well at roughly 2 thousandths off of the deck, and while it is looking a lot better, we know that with another cut or two we can be completely flat, so we'll run the spindle down to 3 thousandths on the DRO and make another cut. We tried some lubricant on this cut to see what effect it had on the surface finish, but in the end I'm pretty sure it just made more of a mess. Our 3 thousandths cut pretty well had the surface good to go, so we decided to make one more cut for a total of 4 thousandths of an inch off of the deck. This time slowing the table traverse to closer to 3 inches per minute for a perfect finish cut. I have to say, this block is starting to look amazing, and if it wasn't for the slight difference in material of the new top hat sleeves and the old cast iron block, I think it would take a trained eye to even notice the sleeves. In the end, we're worried about functionality first, aesthetics second. Let's take a break for a moment to learn more about our sponsor for this video, Bespoke Post, a free-to-join monthly membership club. Every month, members are sent a box of top-tier products from under-the-radar brands based on a preference quiz that the members fill out when joining the club. Based on my preferences, they sent me 3 different boxes here that we're going to check out today. Each box has around $70 in value, but you're only paying a fraction of the price as a member. The first box we have here is called Stealth, and pretty much has everything for a guy like me to cover their day-to-day needs. We've got a money clip, a waterproof aluminum key capsule here that's nice to carry around maybe an ibuprofen. We've also got a nice pocket knife here. And finally, my personal favorite in this box, we have a multi-tool ballpoint pen. Something we love about Bespoke Post is that 90% of the products in Bespoke Post boxes come from small brands, many of which are based right here in the US. This box is called Frontier. Here we've got another cool pocket knife. We've got a nice notebook here. That's great for taking notes around the shop. We've got a nice heavy-duty bottle opener here. That's great for after work. A fountain pen, which kind of piqued my interest because I've never actually used a fountain pen.
just like we used to use when I was in grade school in penmanship class. I haven't used one since about 5th grade.
Another cool thing here is that you're only going to pay for what you want. You basically have 3 different options. You can keep the box, you can trade the box for a different box that looks more interesting to you, or number 3, you can skip that month entirely at no cost. Our last box here is called Filet, and inside we have the almost 4-inch kitchen knife, and then on top of it, the 8-inch knife. Now I know you're probably thinking, hey, this is a machine shop channel, why are you getting kitchen knives? And actually it's because after a long day at work, the thing that I love to do is go home and cook a great meal for me and my wife. As you guys know, when you're supporting our sponsors, you're also directly supporting us. So if Bespoke Post looks like something you'd be interested in, you can get 20% off your first box by clicking the link in the description of this video and using the code JIMS20, that's JIMS20 at checkout, all caps. Or better yet, you can go to bespokepost.com/JIMS20. Thanks again to Bespoke Post. Let's get back to work on the Jaguar now. Someday I'd love to have a fancy new CNC block machine with an automatic tool changer, but for now I'm just thankful that my dad invested in a machine like this one that at least has the tool caddy on the side to make it relatively quick and easy to swap over from the surfacing head to the boring head. It's amazing what some of the new equipment can do, but you would also be amazed by the cost. I mean, we're talking machines that are worth more than my house. In a small, low-volume shop like ours, they would literally take decades to pay for themselves. To get centered up on each cylinder, the machine has a built-in dial indicator that reads off of what we call the centering finger. As the finger rotates around the bore, the high and the low spots of the cylinder show on the dial indicator. By moving the x-axis and the y-axis of the table, we can dial in on the center of the cylinder. We pretty much eyeball it to get close, and we can see the dial swinging pretty dramatically. But as we move the table closer to center, the needle begins to swing less aggressively, indicating that we're centered up well. The ID of the new sleeves is actually about 20 thousandths smaller than the standard bore size for this engine, so an added benefit of going with the top hat sleeves is that we can go back to standard size pistons as opposed to going oversized like we originally planned. We're going to be boring the cylinders to 5 thousandths under standard size, but first we need to set up the machine. The cylinders measure right at 7 inches long, so with our cutter at the top of the cylinder, we'll move over to the side of the machine and set the stop. Sometimes people comment about how crazy it is to see a tape measure in a machine shop, but there's no reason to break out a caliper for a rough measurement like this. With our spindle stop set, our cutter set to the proper diameter, and the machine centered up on our first cylinder, it's time to bore. On a light cut like this, we generally run around 550 RPM on the spindle, and we like to feed the first bit by hand just to make sure that everything looks right before engaging the spindle feed. At this point, the cylinders will have a very sharp edge at the top, so while the machine runs through the first cylinder, we're going to set up an angled cutter to chamfer the cylinders. Sometimes I see some interesting explanations for the chamfer in the comment section, but it's simply done to aid in installing the pistons and rings during final assembly of the engine. Around 40 thousandths wide is usually a good spot, and we can take note of the z-axis reading on the DRO so that all of the cylinders come out exactly the same. For the next 5 cylinders, the process is the same except for the fact that I like to center up first, chamfer second, and bore third. Thank you to everyone who made it this far. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Now I'll quit rambling for a second and let you simply enjoy the sweet sounds of machining. Before going any farther, the cleaning guy wanted to come over and check my work. I guess he doesn't trust the young guy.
How's it look?
Looks like it'll work.
In no time flat, we have all 6 of the cylinders rough bored within about 5 thousandths of an inch of the finished bore size for standard size pistons, but that being said, we always measure each piston to verify size and condition in case we need to finish the cylinders bigger or smaller. These pistons have quite a bit of taper in the skirts by design, but they all seem to measure similarly, with only one checking out a tenth or so larger than the nominal size. The pistons call for a minimum piston to wall clearance of 1/1000th of an inch, so we're going to size the cylinders to a minimum of 1/10 over the nominal standard size. With our 0 on the bore gauge set to our finished size, we can go ahead and get the block up into the Sonnen CV616 cylinder home. The pan rail of the block sits in the machine on 2 parallels, and a bar is put through the mains to clamp the block in place. There's no need to level the block or anything like that, as the hone is designed with universal joints to compensate for slight misalignments. With the block in the machine, there are a few different steps to get the machine ready to hone. The hone head has 2 guides, which must be shimmed to fit the bore size. This tool fits into a cylinder and allows us to check the thickness of the guide and shim until they're the correct size. We're going to start with the diamond roughing stones, which also must be shimmed, although there are only 2 shim sizes for the stones, so you just choose whichever one gets you the closest. With the guides and stones shimmed, the next step is to set the stroke length on the machine. We can measure the length of the cylinder again, although we already know the length is 7 inches from earlier in the process. The door on the right side of the machine gives us access to a ruler, which can be adjusted to the cylinder length in order to set the stroke length of the machine. Next, we need to adjust the height of the block relative to the hone head. The hone has been adjusted to the top of its stroke, and with the hone head in place in the cylinder, we can raise or lower the block for the proper overstroke. Finally, we need to adjust the belts and pulleys of the machine for the proper stroke rate and revolutions per minute based on the chart in the machine that references the cylinder length and diameter. At this point, we're ready to hone, but we always start slowly to make sure we don't crash the hone into the main webbing of the block. The diamond stones we're using to begin with are very coarse, so they remove material quickly but leave a pretty rough surface finish which you can actually catch your fingernail on. Our plan is to bring the cylinders to within a couple of thousandths of finished size with the diamond stones. Throughout this process, we're stopping and measuring the cylinders from top to bottom to ensure that we're keeping them straight. If there are tight spots, we can make adjustments to the machine and or use the manual dwell feature to remove more material at those points. We also alternate the cylinders to help keep the block cool, as the process can build a fair amount of heat in the block, which can change the accuracy of your measurements. Our goal every step of the way is to keep the cylinders consistent and on size from top to bottom. Once all 6 cylinders have been roughed out with the diamond stones, we're going to move to our conventional vitrified abrasives, and while we're still using a fairly rough grit stone, you can see how much smoother it is than the diamonds that we were using on the previous process. Our plan with this set of stones is to get within about 1/1000th of our finished size. And once again, I'm going to quit my rambling and let you enjoy the sounds of the hone. I'm sure that some of you can even smell the honing oil through the screen. Like I stated earlier, the manufacturer on these pistons calls for a minimum of 1/1000th piston to wall clearance. As such, the actual size of the piston is a nominal 3.624 inches, 1/1000th shy of the nominal standard bore size for this engine of 3.625 inches. With all of the cylinders honed with the rough vitrified abrasive, we're going to move over to a finer abrasive to bring the cylinders to within roughly a few tenths of our finished bore size. Finally, we're getting close to finishing up these cylinders, so at this point, you better hope that you have them straight, because there's no going back. With one last stone that's even finer than the last, we're going to take the bores to our finished size, which only takes just over a few strokes in each cylinder. I'll also note that throughout the process, we've been taking breaks to allow the block to cool, and always let the block cool back down before my final measurements to ensure that we're getting an accurate dimension. Just like that, our cylinders are at our finished size, and the machine work is almost wrapped up on this engine block. Once again, we're double and triple checking the quality of our work before the job heads out the door. Keep in mind that the camera view of the bore gauge shows a little bit of parallax, but hopefully you can see that the bores are straight and on size, just like we were hoping for. The last step before leaving the hone is to do around 15 strokes through each cylinder with a brush hone. This really doesn't remove any further material, but the goal is that it will remove any remaining rough peaks that would otherwise be worn off by the piston rings on the initial break-in process. As most of you should be aware, a critical but sometimes overlooked piece of the process is to clean, and clean some more. The block moves directly from the cylinder hone into our smaller spray cabinet, which is basically like a giant dishwasher for engine parts. We run a strong detergent in this machine, which helps break up any remaining grease and oil that might be in or on the block. It runs at near boiling temperature and has a turntable that spins the block as it's blasted by high-pressure nozzles. After running for half a cycle or so, we like to stop the machine and run a brush through the cylinders with some water to help wash any remaining contaminants away. At that point, the machine is started for another cycle. At the end of the second wash cycle, we rinse the entire block. Our water hose has a small nozzle, which is sprayed deep into every passage and bolt hole to rinse any remaining contaminants away. After the entire block has been rinsed, it's immediately blown dry, again with a nozzle that can reach into all of the passages and bolt holes. Blowing it dry helps prevent the block from rusting, but it's also one more failsafe against contaminants. The final step in the cleaning process is to thoroughly wipe down the cylinders. You'll be amazed at how dirty your cylinders can be even after all of that washing and rinsing, but the hone leaves behind microscopic bits of stone and cylinder material. We found that the best solution for a final wipe down of the cylinders is actually automatic transmission fluid. To make a long story short, you need to wipe down the cylinders as many times as it takes until your rag comes out clean. If you're still getting a dirty rag, your cylinder is still dirty. With that, the 4.2 liter Jaguar Block is wrapped up and ready to go back home with the customer to begin a new life. I'll admit that originally we were skeptical of the repair, but after hours of research and consulting, we're confident that this block is leaving our shop better than new. I never considered myself an artist, and I really do try to stay humble, but the transformation that we were able to take this block through is honestly a thing of beauty. We hope you enjoyed the process, and if you did, we would love for you to drop a comment, as my family and I try to read every single one of them. I want to say a big thank you for watching, and be sure to stay tuned as we have plenty of good videos coming up, including more on other parts of this Jag engine, as well as the Ford Model A and more.